Queen. This is dedicated to all my beautiful queens, all my beautiful ladies out there. She's a queen. Go queen. You got it, girl. She's a queen. You better represent. Go queen. Go queen. Go. She's a queen about her business. Queen. Working hard on a mission. Yeah. Head high, purpose driven. Purpose driven. Crown on never tilted. Queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go. Represent. You're a queen. You're a queen. Oh.
Thank you guys for tuning in to a very special episode of the Go Queen Brand podcast, the Key Chat. I have an extremely special guest today. She is the one that started my whole journey into video interviews. She's, like I said, she's extremely special to me. My guest today is Miss Mignon Francois. All of you that are familiar with her, she made $5 and turned it into millions with the Cupcake Collection. And right now, she's embarking on another journey. She has this great book that's going to be coming out next week on May 9th, entitled Made from Scratch. So we're going to talk about her book. She's going to inspire us. And of course, we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is self-love. How are you doing today?
I am so, listen, I was excited. I was dancing to the intro, first of all, but I was excited just to see all of the ways that you've been evolving over time. And this is just beautiful, I have to say. And I'm extremely invested in it because it's one New Orleans girl to another.
Yes.
I love that part.
Thank you so much. Again, you mean a lot to me, and this is a huge full circle moment to be speaking with you again. So I want to dive in. Of course, we're going to talk about a lot, but I want to start off with the book. You know, you have an amazing story, so inspiring, even from our previous interview on being a single mother, 6 children, all the ups and downs that you went through. $5 making those cupcakes, you know, and like you said, you weren't even a big baker or cook. And now you have this book. You're putting that story in the paper. So I wanted to start off with what inspired you to finally put your amazing story in a book?
That is such a good question. It's people like you. It's all of the people who are saying to me, I'm going to need you to write this down. Girl, this is going to be a good book. The world needs this story. And it was the very fact that I was trying to effectually reach a lot of people, right? And I had promised God, if you make me successful, I will tell anybody who will listen about what they could do if they believe. And then I found myself being limited by where I could be at the same time. And so I just was like, okay, if I sit down and write this book, then wherever I am and wherever you are, even if I can't get to you right now, if it's in the wee hours of the morning, we can collide and connect together. No matter what country you're in, no matter what city or state you're in, and no matter what time of day it is, because we found ourselves being, unable to get to an interview over here or a podcast over there. And this just brings, I was reading devotional the other morning, and it was like, God said, I am at the intersection of here and now waiting for you.
Oof.
And it was just like, that's what this allows me to do. It allows us to collide at this intersection of here and right now.
Wow. It brings chills down my spine. If you can, for anyone that may not be familiar with your story, can you give the background to the Cupcake Collection? This, the whole tagline, of course, is starting with that $5. So for anyone may not be familiar with your story, can you give the background on how you started and baked those cupcakes with the few ingredients and how it led you to where you're at now?
Yes. So I was living in what was becoming an affluent part of town. I was listening to Dave Ramsey on the radio. He's a financial guru. He's telling people they could get out of debt by having a bake sale or a garage sale. But I had sold everything that I had. So a bake sale was what I was going to need to do. Problem is, I didn't know how to bake, not even out of a box. And we were living in our house on a generator because we didn't have electricity on a regular basis. and bottled water at bath time, because I would have to go to the grocery store to buy water to pour into the tub because our water wasn't running regularly also out of the faucet. When my neighbor knocked on the door and asked me to make cupcakes for all of her clients, I was sitting in the back of my house with no electricity. And I would sit in the house in the daytime in order that I could save up the gas from the generator at night so my children could have normalcy. And when she asked me to make these cupcakes, I took the gamble to take the last $5 that we had, which I had planned to use for dinner that night. And this was really a gamble because if she didn't pay me like she said she was going to, then we were out, how we were going to eat. But she did like she said. When I gave her some of the cupcakes, she gave me some of the money. And so I turned that 5 into 60 that night. I turned that 60 into 600 by the end of the week. And I've been flipping that same money for the last 17 years to open my business. We bootstrapped everything. And when I got that $600 check, I knew that I wanted to make more cupcakes. I think that what people have to learn is that when you decide that you want to get out of your situation, then you've got to know what out looks like for you. And out for me meant that we were going to have electricity when we hit the switch, and we were going to have water when we turned on those knobs. I wanted field trip money, and I wanted an assurance that we were going to have a roof over our head. And those were the things that looked like success for me.
Wow. What would you say? Because right now, of course, we live in a world right now where a lot of people are turning to entrepreneurship. Of course, with COVID, a lot of people, especially single mothers, as you mentioned, they learned how to become even more creative to turn money into more money. But I still, sometimes people still need that inspiration, that blueprint. There may be some people that can't figure out, I guess, how to find their way. What would you say to motivate someone to have that confidence in entrepreneurship? I know sometimes people knock entrepreneurship. They're like, well, what's wrong with having a traditional 9 to 5? There's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes people want to pave their own way. So what would you say to inspire?
This is so good. I don't think there's anything wrong with a traditional 9 to 5, but I believe that we're all entrepreneurs. I believe we are in the business of our own labor. And so however you decide to use that labor, your customer may be that one client that you work that 9 to 5 job for. And what I would want to tell people is that all you have is all you need to get you from where you are to where you want to be. I am the picture of what economic insecurity looks like. Many of us are going to jobs. We are using whatever money we have to put in the gas tank to get us there. For me, sometimes it was a decision on whether or not my children were going to school today because I didn't have either gas for them to get to school or it was going to be gas to put in the generator. And I was tired of being sick and tired. And I talk about this in the book. You could be sick or you can be tired, Mignon, but you don't get to be both. That just is not going to, that's not working for me. And so the thing that I believe that the pandemic showed us was that if we find ourselves on the inside of our houses, so many people were turning to me and saying, what are we supposed to do? And they were afraid. And I wanted people to understand that our faith was currency and it could perform like money. And that the input we put in, because it's according to your faith, it will be unto you. Just like with money, according to what you deposit, you can take out, right? And so I believe so heavily that no matter where we are, no matter what we're trying to do, we can look into our house. What do you have in your house? And it might not just be the four walls where you live, but it may just be in your wheelhouse. What is your opportunity? What is your skill set that you have that you can use that can take you from where you are to where it is that you want to be? And that's what I did. I looked to my house. I didn't know how to bake per se, but I used what I had to get what I wanted. At first it was, I'm going to use my daughters who are great bakers. And then they let me know, well, we're not really interested in your little bakery idea, Mom. So then it's like, okay, where are you going to get this the skill that you need. So I called on my grandmother, who I had spent a lot of time with.
Mhm.
Grandma, I need a recipe. Can you help me? My grandmother didn't have recipe either. So I was going to who I thought could give me the answers, and she didn't have the answers.
Mm.
But what I was able to do was I was able to take little bits and pieces of every stupid thing that I've ever had to do and weave it into together into this one experience, right? So I take what I've learned from my grandmother, snapping beans with her and learning what her hands look like and what her method is in her way, and then taking my experience from Xavier University, where I couldn't apply that science to the human body. Now I can apply that science to flour, butter, sugar, and eggs. And it was in that moment that this aha that, oh, this is science.
Mhm.
This is what they were trying to get me to understand that I never could understand. And I was able to start writing my own recipes because everything was sent to teach me. But you only get that if you're actually looking for the lesson.
Mm. Wow. Wow. I mean, faith into currency, that's something else. I want to ask you, as far as the book, because of course, like I said, you have an amazing story. You
Thank you.
really have defied so many different odds. It's just really, it's like it's just so magical what you've gone through and what you've
Thank you.
experienced, of course, by the grace of God. With your book, again, you do have a story that inspires others. So it's wonderful that you have put this in a book. Did you have any challenges or did you face any challenges having confidence putting it onto paper? You know, because sometimes it's easier for us to tell our stories, but sometimes you have to relive things to put things down on paper. How
Yep.
was your confidence level? Did you face any challenges writing the book?
That is such a good question. It took me 2 years to write the book, and I feel like I was like, "God, you don't give me nothing easy, man. I gotta I gotta work hard for everything." It took me 2 years to open the store, working every day like it was already a business before it ever opened. It took me 2 years to open the New Orleans store, which showed me that you don't get to take your success with you. And then it took me 2 years to write this book actively every day like a job, to write it down, and it was my story and I had already lived it. I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to have this in the bag. I'm going to be done with this in 6 weeks. I'm going to be finished. And then 2 years later, I finally turned the manuscript in, finally done, because I didn't know that I was going to go on a journey. I
Mm.
didn't know that I was going to learn some things about myself. And listen, I want you to write a book, girl. I want you to do it. Like, you have a story, and I think I really believe everybody should write one. Like,
Yeah.
even if you don't plan to publish this thing, it will be a laborious project. I mean, it will be like giving birth to something,
Mhm.
but it will be worth it. I learned so much about myself. All my life, I didn't think that my dad even liked me, let alone loved me, which I talk about in the book. And I found out I was my daddy's girl. Like,
Wow.
I it takes some time for you to look at your parents' story and
Mhm.
to understand that this was their first time doing it too. Just like we want people to give us grace as women, as parents, right? But it was their first time too,
Yeah.
being parents also. And but when we see them, we see them through our childlike eyes. It's like, oh, you should have known better. Oh, you should have had this right. Oh, this should have been perfect. And at the end of the day, it's like my parents parented the way they were parented, and they did the best they could. But I learned so much about myself in writing the story. I was able to pinpoint the day that I first found out that I was ugly and
Mm.
celebrate the day that I found out that I was beautiful. But it took me to write it down in this book to be able to go through all of those experiences.
Mm. That is a healing journey. And what you said too, especially about our parents, I
Yeah.
think we all go through this phase where we may, instead of having gratitude, we get to some stages, some highs and lows, where we may deal with some resentment, whether we want to
Mhm.
admit it or not. And of
Mhm.
course, who's the easiest person to pinpoint when you're going through resentment is the people.
Mom and them.
Exactly. So you start pointing when you were a kid and you start thinking about mama and daddy. And
Mhm.
sometimes we even blame them for moments where they weren't even present. when it happened, because those were our first protectors. So
Yeah.
even things that we've gone through as kids, where something that happened at school, your mom and daddy wasn't at school, but in your mind, you start blaming them. And
About how they didn't prepare you and how come I didn't know and what,
exactly.
I mean, they didn't even know.
Right. And I just feel like a part of healing, you have to have self forgiveness and grace. For
Mhm.
you, with what you've gone through, what does healing and self forgiveness look like? Because not only do we have to forgive others, we have to forgive ourselves for when we didn't
Mhm.
know any better. So, what
Mhm.
does that look like for you?
Got these lyrics that really help me to define this. She says, um, I am who I am today because God used my mistakes. He worked them for my good, like no one else ever could. And she said, God told me to tell you it was necessary.
Mm,
And when I just think about all of the things and that have happened to me and the bad choices that I've made and the ways that I have taken wrong steps, I realize I have cried over that song. And
yeah.
sometimes when I need to be reminded, I just go and blast it on repeat. I need to be reminded I am who I am today because God used my mistakes and He worked them for my good, like no one else ever could. I'm here today because all this stuff was necessary. And so
Right.
I'm realizing there were no mistakes because we don't even know the plan for our own lives.
Right.
And while one of my friends, my friend Marcia, says it like this: God sets a table before you, and He said, "What do you want to eat? You want steak or you want fish? Either way, we eating.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what path you take, either way, I'm eating."
Right.
And just maybe I would have eaten a different meal if I had taken another journey, but this is the journey that I took, so this is the meal that I'm eating. And so I'm grateful for the whole entire journey. And if I had to go back and do it all over again, like some of it was hard, and I want to say, oh, I wouldn't do it
Yeah.
again, but if it means that I land here, then if that's what it takes, then that's what then it was necessary.
Right. Part of growth is finding gratitude even when life is not going the way that we planned it to go. And
Mhm.
that is a hard thing. Like, can you find gratitude? Can you still thank God? Can you still praise Him when the bank account doesn't look like the way you wanted it to look like? Can you still
Mhm.
praise Him when you're not in the health that you think you deserve to have? Can you still praise Him when your children may not be the kids that you thought you raised? Can you still have the gratitude and still praise Him when you're at the low?
Mhm.
And it's just something else when anything to me, it took a lot for me to learn this at 46 years old, but I'm like, any pain that I've experienced, if it led me to God, well, so be it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that
Amen.
in order to give us some peace and of course healing and self-forgiveness is like, okay, Lord, I thank you for what I learned through those situations because of my bad choices. And again,
Mhm.
sometimes we get resentful towards God. Like, well, why did I end up in this situation? Like, He told you not to do this. You
Yeah.
had so many warnings and you still did it anyway.
Yeah,
But
you hear the red flags, you still going.
right. So it's about taking accountability. We have to look at what we did. But again, when we can still have that gratitude and thank Him for the pain that we've experienced, it does give you a lot
Mhm.
of peace for sure. So
Yeah.
I want to take a brief break. Of course, this is a wonderful conversation. Speaking of purpose, we're just going to take a brief break to learn a little bit more about Go Queen, and we'll be right back with Mignon Francois. Thank you guys again. I've had many personal struggles. I've gone through mental, physical, emotional abuse. I've also grew up with low self-esteem, not feeling my value, not understanding how worthy I was. And I was able to learn through the power of self-love to overcome those sinking feelings to be healthy, healed, and whole. I know how hard it can be to just find your place. Some of us are still struggling. We want to find our place in this world and we want to know our purpose. And sometimes that purpose may be being healthier. Sometimes that purpose may also be leaving that 9 to 5, leaving that toxic work environment. Sometimes that healing may look like just simply being healthy, happy, and loving yourself, being out of that low self esteem. That's why I created Go Queen. I wanted to reach out to other women and show them that you may have been knocked down a few times, but you definitely will not be counted out. You can take that pain that you've experienced and you don't have to be ashamed. You can take that pain and you can build your purpose. Life is so short. We are not allotted the time that we arrogantly think that we have. We have to live in our dreams and purpose right now. So, what's stopping you? Maybe you don't know how to manage your time properly. Maybe you're thinking, hey, I have this 9 to 5. I don't have the time to follow that dream, and I'll just put it off on the back burner. But one thing I can tell you that is guaranteed, each and every one of us has a day and a time when we will no longer be on this earth. So you don't have the time to waste anymore. As a purpose coach and brand strategist, I'm committed to helping women of color rise above their challenges and create purposeful and passion driven brands. You can reflect your unique story. Let me be your guide in this journey of healing and growth. You don't have to let your past hold you back from a bright future. You can turn your pain into power. You deserve to win. So we're back with Mignon Francois, and speaking of turning pain into purpose, I want to ask you some more questions about the book without giving away everything. What are
Mhm.
some of the main takeaways you, if you had to just really pinpoint someone who's not familiar with your story, who
Mhm.
gets this book, what would be some of the top takeaways that you would want them to pick up from that book to just serve the purpose and putting your story in that book to inspire others?
Well, one of the things that I want people to know is I had this dream. So I had this dream that I was in a dark well, and it was a muddy well. Nobody was else was inside of the well with me. There was, like a well dug out of the dirt. It was really deep down far, and there's a little water in the bottom of the well. And I got tired of being in the well, so I decided that I wanted to get out. I'm going to climb out this well. And I don't know how long in the dream I was in the well, but I was going to get up out of this well, right? So I decided to start clawing at the sides of the dirt wall. And I made myself some steps to get out. And I'm just like, as I'm getting up to the grass, and I'm going to claw myself across this grass to get out of this well. I'm like, why didn't I think of that before?
Mm.
And then just beyond my reach is a tree that I'm going to use to wrap my arms around and pull myself out of this well. But just before I reach far enough to get to the tree, I feel something tugging on my foot. And I look back, and there is a lady um hanging onto my foot.
Mm.
And the look on her face was like, please don't leave me here.
Mm.
And so I get ready to, like, kick her off of my foot because I'm thinking she's trying to pull me down, but realize quickly she needs me to help her get out of here too.
Wow.
And so I say to her, if I'm gonna help you get out, you can't pull me down. We
Mm.
both gonna have to, you're gonna have to help me help you get out of this hole. And
Mm.
so I crawl for the tree and I'm pulling out. And then when I get out and I'm trying to help her out, she looks back and realizes there's somebody on her foot. And I'm just like, where were all of y'all when I was at the bottom of this well? None of y'all were here with me. And when I woke up from the dream, God showed me that this is your life.
Mm.
I brought you through so you can pull other people out.
Mm.
And that's why I wrote the story. I get really, really vulnerable in the book about stuff that I've never even said out loud, stories I've never even shared. Because, like I'm like every other, Black mama at least. What happens in my house stays up in my house, and you better not tell my business. So as I'm getting ready to tell stuff that I've never said publicly, I brought some of these stories to my children and asked them how did they feel about them? What did they think about these stories? And one of the stories I said to my daughter, is this good? And she said, so you're asking me if this story is good, but it's the story of the day I watched my dad try to kill my mom.
Mm.
It's not good, but it's well written, Mom.
Mm.
And I said, "Ooh, that's really good. It's well written." That's how what I should have asked. And
Yeah.
I asked her if she was all right with it. And it brought her back to that day, and it made my daughters have to relive something that they had been thinking about, but they had not really discussed it with me.
Yeah.
And so this is a story that I've never told anybody. It was something we kept to ourselves, just our very, just the people who needed to know knew about it. And I learned from the process that you need to share your things because you just don't know who needs it or whose life is depending on it. So I get real transparent about some things that I've never said before because I know it is going to be life-giving for someone else who's holding on to my ankles saying, please don't leave me down here in this well.
Mm. And you know what? I think one of the takeaways just from my experience and getting to know you and your story is how your journey inspires single mothers. If anything, I think single mothers unfortunately gets the brunt of everything sometimes. There's platforms dedicated to trashing single mothers. And it's just bizarre to me.
Yeah.
What how could you inspire that single mother who some of them may be in an abusive relationships, going through financial insecurity, which a lot of people don't even understand, this food insecurity, just struggling as mothers, and you turn around and you can't even get any motivation. So what would you say to that single mother just to encourage them? Because you're an example that you can come out of your situation, that you can make it, and that you're valuable.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is such a good question. I want people to know that everything that you believe is happening to you is actually happening for you. That all things, if all things work together for your good, then that means that it's not over until you win. And I believe when I'm in my deepest despair, my darkest hours, I say, God, I know the word of God for me says that all things work together for the good of them who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So if I believe that, God, then I know this is not the end because this is not what winning looks like for me. So this has got to be working for me. How are you working this for my good? Back to those lyrics again. He worked it for my good like no one else ever could.
Mm. Wow, wow. And that's such needed advice to give. I know
Mm-hmm.
another main ingredient for made from scratch that has played in your life is obviously your relationship with God and your spirituality.
Uh-huh.
How has he always maintained to be that main ingredient, that recipe for the success you have? Because again, I know from talking to you that he is the main ingredient in your life and in your business and your success. So how do you
Yeah.
maintain your spirituality? How much has he meant for you in
Oh
this
my
whole
gosh. You
project?
have the best questions, first of all. There's a reason why you're doing this. I love it because there are so many promises that remain the same. And one of the things what I decided to do was I realized in reading my Bible that God said, try me. Like they have all these good t-shirts that said, thou shall not try me, but God says, try me and see if I won't do everything that I tell you, that I would do. And I just keep seeing example after example after example that he's showing up for me and doing everything he promised that he would.
Mm.
And when I see other people looking at my life. I went to a friend's retirement party yesterday, and I was so sleepy, but I needed to go to this retirement party because this particular gentleman to me was the first person who saw me as an entrepreneur who had something valuable to add, and he needed to amplify it. And he was the president of the Visitors and Conventions Bureau here in Nashville. He was retiring and going back home to outside of New Orleans. He's also from the area, living here in Nashville. And so, when I walked into the room, and this guy walks up to me and he said, "Girl, you was walking across this wall. You was looking like an angel covered in white." And I just had to come over here and said, "Baby, I know who you are. And guess what? I'm here because of you."
Wow.
And it's just like, what?
Mm.
He was like, "Yes, don't you know? Like, we follow you. Like, we've been watching your journey." And I'm just like, wow. You really never know how you're able to be, an example or a light for, other people just by showing up to do the things that you've been asked to do into the world.
Right, right. With everything that you're doing, being an entrepreneur and also inspiring other people, what does self care look like to you? Just not being so consumed and overworked, just relaxing, taking care of yourself. What are your routines to relax and to unwind sometimes?
Oh, I love that. I think I'm just now learning about self-care. I don't think I've got it all the way together, but I think I talk about this too in the book where what I did was I looked at other successful people
Mm,
and I said, okay, what is it that they were doing that make them wildly successful? And one of the things that yes, they grind, right? It's like I used to believe I'll sleep when I'm dead. I used to say that. But now what I realize is while you see them go hard, you also see them retreat. So you might see them work, 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 work so that they can get out whatever project they're trying to do. But then you don't see them no more. You don't see them for 3 years. You don't see them for 5 years because they've gone in and they're taking care of themselves. And so that's the thing that I'm learning to do in this season of my life as we have hired people to help us, honey. Like there are other people now, and I have learned part of self-care for me was to learn to let the people who you have hired to do their job. And that has been so healing for me. Like this year we brought on a COO and he's actually doubles as my child. And one of the things he said was like, "Mom, I've been away from home, learning from the best about what it is that we need to do, and now let me do it." And
mm,
I was talking to the producer who works on all of these things with me, and she handles all and coordinates all of our marketing efforts and things. And I said, "I am going to be so sad the day that you outgrow me and you leave, but I'm so glad that we brought Dylan in this year because you would have been gone by now if he wasn't." She said, "I would have been gone." But he allowed us to ramp up and to grow quickly in
mm,
a way that she needed it to happen, in the way one of my other daughters, well, two of my other daughters who are on the team
mhm,
need to happen, the way my production manager, who is one of my children, needed it to happen. It just all shifted at the time that it needed to happen. And what they needed me to do was go take a rest. And what my son says, like, "Mom, you've been working ever since you were 15."
yeah. Mm,
Like that is it's enough. Let
yeah.
us take care of you. And so that has been the biggest form of self-love. I'm just learning it. So I'm not that good at it. But when I was out, I had recently had surgery and I was out for a week, and it should have been like one good full week, maybe 10 days. And
Mhm.
I called Tanisha, who does all the marketing. She also travels with me everywhere and keeps my schedule and things. And she's like, "Can you stop calling me?" Like and so what they did was they erased my schedule so I couldn't see it. And
Mhm.
they were keeping the schedule on the side. and I didn't even know what's going on. So all I could do was sleep. And when I walked into that retirement party yesterday, a friend of mine saw me. He said, "You look like you've been rested. Like you just look like you glowing with rest." And I was like, I have been resting. And
Wow.
for me, sleeping in and then getting up to go to my gym appointments, that is ultimate self-care.
Wow, wow. And I think one thing that's also very wonderful about what you created is that you can bring in your children,
Mhm.
especially after everything you guys have experienced. That is a beautiful thing that your kids can be a part of what you're doing. It's definitely just another testament of your work and just what you've done as a mother too. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that touches my heart because I believe that they believe that too. One of
mhm,
the things that I'm having the opportunity to do is not only be able to nurture them and the legacy that we're trying to leave, but my grandchildren get to see it too. And we're getting to be a part of them trying to buy houses for themselves. We've just helped the second one close on their house. I want to see all of my kids. They're all my kids in some sort of
yeah.
way. I just
Mhm,
want to see all my kids have home ownership, and I want to see them understand how they move their leadership in a new way. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to create a platform that they could use.
mm. That is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing, and I love it. I just think that's wonderful. One of the final things I do want to ask you, of course, as I mentioned, I do end everything with self love. I think just learning to love yourself is such a key ingredient, just to success, to peace, to healing. Being able to look in the mirror and love yourself, seeing that you're beautiful, having self love to say, hey, I can start this business, I can be successful for my children. I don't have to be confined to the past of pain. There's so many things that self love can bring us to. It brings us to ultimate peace, success, joy, you name it. So I wanted to ask you, how do you define self love and what role has it played in where you are right now?
Oh my gosh. One of the things that I believe is that I have been looking for love in all of the wrong places. And it's something that I talk about once again, like you're so good at this. It's something that I talk about in the book. There's a story that I tell about my cousin taking me to the movies on a date that she had with her boyfriend. My cousins are a lot Most of my cousins are much older than me, so I was like my cousin's baby.
Yeah.
And we went to the movies and we went to see Urban Cowboy, and it was starring John Travolta. And one of the songs that I remember from the movie was Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. It was an abusive relationship and, all of this kind of stuff. And I learned, and I think this is where I talk about it in the book. I had been looking for my dad to love me in ways that no one had ever loved him.
Mm,
And he was doing his best with the way he was parented. And at the end of the day, it's like I always expected my parents to do something like we were saying earlier, like was always expecting my parents to do something that they didn't even understand. They
right.
were just doing the best with what they were dealt. And I think I was judging him all along, and I was looking for him to be my dad in a different way. And he didn't know how to do that. They didn't stop him from loving me, but I thought that meant that he didn't. And there are studies that there's so much that writing a book teaches you because you got to get your facts down and things like that. And there's studies that say that if a girl doesn't have the love of her father by a certain time or doesn't feel the love of her father by a certain time, she'll have self-esteem issues. And
Right.
that's what I suffered with. I suffered with issues of self-esteem, and I didn't begin to truly get a grasp of who I am until we buried my father.
Mm,
And I really got to see him. And I really got a chance to extend grace to him I've been so long trying to take and get something else when all I needed to offer him was grace. And that's the thing that I want people to um, see about me and know that I'm trying to offer in this world besides joy that I want to leave. This journey of self-care and self-healing has taken me to understanding that everybody we're experiencing is somebody's child. And
Mhm.
not only are they somebody's child, somebody loves the heck out of them and wants only the best for them. And so if I treat you right, and if I treat your child right, you're gonna want to do something nice for me, right? Or if I can't stand your child and I want to talk about your child, oh, she get on my nerves. You know what I mean? Like we're so always so easy to tear people down and you know take want to take something from them, but in the end of the day, I just want to offer grace. And when you experience me or when you remember me, I want people to be able to say, she was so graceful. You
Mm.
know, she said that so gracefully because I just want to be, because when I sit with myself and I beat myself up about the things I thought or the things I said, I want to be all right with me. You
Mm.
know, like I want to be able to forgive myself, or want to be able to say, man, yeah, girl, you doing a good job. Girl,
Right.
you are okay. Because
Mm.
in the end, when I let my words be full of grace and seasoned with salt, I don't got to take nothing back. And that's the thing that this journey is teaching me, that you could just sit back and wait. You don't have to snap off with the things you have to say. You can hold your answer for a little while. And I find that sitting with my answers and marinating on what I want to say, let me chew on my words for a second. That's something I miss. Let me chew on these words because when I swallow them, I want to be good. I want to be good with what happens in my gut.
Mm. Wow. Wow. That
Mhm.
definitely is a road to peace. Just
Mhm.
having grace and having grace for others. And that's a good recipe just to look at someone as a child.
Yeah.
It would just change your perspective on how you address people, how you view them. Because you're right, we all were innocent children at one point. It doesn't matter who that person is now. We all started out as
Yeah.
innocent
I
children.
see when I see homeless people, there's a man, my son and I were driving down the street. He said, Mama, that man's been homeless my entire life. He's like, I have watched this man grow old, Mama. And I said, ooh, that's deep.
Mm.
And I'm just thinking, like, on the day he was born, did anybody dream this for him? And is there anyone around to dream anything for him, to
Right.
care about him, to be concerned about him? And so when my son, ran into him at the grocery store on the side of the road, he was asking for something, and my son went in the car and got him whatever he needed. It's just like, I watched that man grow old. He
Mm.
has a certain level of respect for him as a homeless man,
Right.
because you are a person, you are a human being, you're a spiritual being having a human experience. And I love that about him. I love that he's like, Mama, I gotta have respect for him. I
Mm.
don't know if he's an angel. I don't know anything. He don't bother nobody. I've just seen him walk the same stretch
Mm.
19 years. For as long as he can remember. 19 years. I remember being a little bitty kid before kindergarten. I remember watching that man and I just think, somebody dreamed something for you when you were a child. It just helps me to be so much more kind to people, so much more forgiving to people. And in the end, the reason why I'm saying that's my journey of self love, because when I lay my head down at night and I got to lay with what I said to you, or I got to try to digest what I did, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep well
Mm.
because I'm going to chew on my words before I spit them out.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
If you had to formulate a recipe for life, for peace, for healing, just for self forgiveness, for
Mhm.
giving grace, what would be that life recipe just to find some grace, to have that perspective that you just said? Because that's what I think, that's what everybody wants. They want to be able to lay their head down at night and have peace, to be settled with the choices they've made, the things that they've said, their actions. A lot of us are trying to find that peace. So, what would be that life recipe if you could create one?
Okay, let me see. Let me think of it like a recipe. I would take probably 2 cups of God.
Mm,
So about a half a cup of conversation, maybe 3/4 of a cup of asking some good questions, and then season that with, what we just talked about, some grace. And I would probably add heat. So I would bake this at a high heat for a certain amount of time. Maybe I bake it at a high heat for a good 18 months, or bake it at a high heat for like 2 years, because it took me 2 years to write this book. It took me 2 years to open that store in Nashville. It took me 2 years to open the store in New Orleans. So I think there's something that happens when you go through the fire for 2 years.
mhm,
And then when you take it out, when you break it in order to serve it, first give thanks.
mm,
And I would say that, I think we talked about this on the last time we interviewed
mhm,
together. An egg will rot in all of its potential unless it becomes broken.
mm,
And I think a lot of times we're so busy trying not to be broken or not to appear broken, but it's in our brokenness that we can become the best version of ourselves that we can be. That egg will rot in being a beautiful egg, uncracked, unbroken. But it's when you break that egg that can become an omelet. You can scramble that thing. You can use it in a cake and make it, let it bind some things together. But you first got to break that thing. And so there's a story in the Bible about Jesus feeding the 5,000 with the loaves and the fishes. It wasn't until he broke the bread and then gave thanks that the people were able to be fed. And so I would say add some brokenness to it and give thanks as you're doing it, so that it can go further and feed people and nourish them, so that they also can look at your life and look at the lessons, and eat off of it too.
mm. I
That
definitely.
was a good recipe, girl. I have to write that one down.
That's an amazing recipe for sure. And the main ingredient, of course, is God and
Mm,
gratitude. This is the recipe for success. Because
yeah.
again, we can't be grateful even when things aren't looking our way.
Mm,
We won't have peace. We have to be grateful in order to not get into a stage of bitterness. And
yeah.
that's when we bake too long. That's when we got to run and grab it out the oven. It's getting too hot. When we get to the sea of bitterness, that's when we have to really, look back over things and add some more grace, because that's the only way that we can survive. Because life, there's no guarantee to life. That some things happen that we didn't expect to happen. We go through ups and downs in life, but it's how we can come out of it. And as you just said, that brokenness is necessary. We have to
Mhm.
crack that egg open in order to create anything. So
Yeah.
again, that's why we can learn to find some purpose through the pain. And I know it's not easy. It's not something that happens overnight. If that
Yeah.
was the case, we wouldn't need God. We wouldn't need anything. So but when we find the purpose to the pain, that's when we can do some amazing things.
Yes.
Lastly, what's the last thing you would like to tell people that are going to tune into this amazing interview about Made from Scratch, why they need to run and get that book on May the 9th, or head over to Amazon now and pre-order? What would you like to tell the viewers and the listeners about grabbing this book Made from Scratch and hearing these wonderful stories and recipes to life, and how they can accomplish anything and how they can overcome anything?
Well, the main thing I want them to know is, honey, go get it. Made from scratch, finding success without a recipe. And it's available on pre-order right now. And then it's also goes on sale on May 9th. But I think if I was going to leave them with anything, it would be to know that I just wanted to collide with them wherever they are, whether it be 3:17 in their morning or whether they be in the depth of a dark well, that it was also me too. that this is a time where I can say, me too, I was broken, but I'm not bitter. I can say, yep, me too, I got left behind. Somebody counted me out too. Yep, I didn't have any money. Yep, I I was faced with, my lights being cut off. Yep, me too. My house was getting foreclosed on. I knew the day that they were selling it at the courthouse steps when I opened up the Cupcake Collection. Yep, me too. And I'm still here. And you're still going to be here. I think it goes down to why we named it Made from Scratch. We learned so much about scratch as I was, trying to find out what we were going to land on when we were naming the book. And the definition of scratch has so much in it. I learned that, first of all, scratch means, to have nothing, right? I ain't got scratch, it's like zero, nada, nothing. But scratch is also to, like, score something on paper. Let me write this down real quick. Scratch is also like a sore. You can scrape somebody and cut them. That's also a scratch. But scratch, I learned in this process, is the line where a race begins. That white line where they start a race at, that's called the scratch line. And as I put it all together, I was like, God, wow, you were making me from scratch all along. From the beginning, you were molding me and making me into who you wanted me to be. And that's what I want somebody to hear in this book, that no matter where you are, all you have is all you need. No matter what has happened to you, it is not over until you win.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Thank you again just for everything, just for sharing your story. And I know just with your light and your testimony, it is to help others. It's like you
Yeah.
said, there's a purpose behind the pain. Everything that we go through, it is to pull that other person that we think is trying to pull us down. But
Yeah.
no, God gave us those missions to pull somebody else up.
Yeah.
And it's just so apparent just in hearing your story. And again, I can't thank you enough just for being who you are. Like, I just
Yeah. Thank
appreciate
you so
your
much.
transparency. And like I said, I know that the book alone, just hearing you speak is enough to help somebody. But I know the book is going to be a bestseller and it is going to help
I
somebody.
receive it. Thank you for speaking that over this book and over my life.
Yes. Before we end everything, tell everybody how they can find you on social media, how
Thank you. They
to
can find
find
me on Instagram at mignon.francois on Instagram. And then the Cupcake Collection is across all platforms. So it's the Cupcake Collection on Instagram, on Facebook, on the cupcakecollection.com. And then on Twitter, we are at Cupcake Tweets.
Awesome. Thank you again for everything. I really appreciate you just blessing
Mhm.
our platform again. As I said, it's a definite full circle moment. So I do hope that everyone who has participated and watched this episode, that they pick up on so many different things. You can forgive yourself. You can have grace. And again, I know that people say it a lot. Oh, find your purpose through your pain, to the point where when you're going through something, you're probably like, I don't want to hear this right now. But there really truly is a
Yeah.
reason for what you're going through. You are valuable, you are worthy. Every
Yeah.
single one of us came into this earth with a dream. God had a plan for each and every one of us. And if we just hand him the torch, we can cross that finish line. We can make it. Whatever we put our minds to, it's already ours. We just have to get those ingredients. We have to start. Sometimes we got to start from scratch, but we can make it. Just believe in yourself, believe in God, and trust him. And whatever you put your mind to, it is already yours. So thank you guys again for tuning into this amazing special episode of the Q Chat. Again, please go follow Mignon. Go ahead and get that book, Made from Scratch. I know it will change your life. Thank you again for supporting the show. Please be safe and make sure you go love yourself. That must have did this beat.